The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Hey everybody, CamiBaker.com here. Welcome to the Happiness Jungle TV show. I am super excited, as I always am, to be with you today because it's a jungle out there, but we can still make it happy. And one of the ways we make it happy is by going on social media and finding people. I have said for a long time now that social media actually makes us the most anti-social people sometimes, but when we use it for what God intended, we can meet great people. Hence why I have Mark Metry on the show today. So Mark and I actually met through LinkedIn.
Yep.
I'm not sure who sent who what first, but I saw that you did a podcast, and of course, being the ever publicizing myself person that I am, I was like, hey, I think we should swap stages. And so we did, and I was on your show, and here you are on mine. So glad to have you.
Unbelievably grateful. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's such an honor.
We have been having such a great time just getting to know each other for the last half hour, waiting for the show to start. I'm not even sure where to start and what to repeat. It was all so great. Talk to us, Mark. You were mentioning to me that your parents are from Egypt, and so when they first came here, they were doing the whole immigrant thing, and share some of your story with us.
Yeah. So I was born in 1997. My parents came to the U.S. A year or two in Boston, around the Massachusetts area. And, they came here, they didn't really know too many people, they didn't know the language. They really didn't have much money coming in. It was just sort of like this goodwill, and they came with my, sister at that time. And just kind of like, because they knew that, there were more opportunities for us here. They didn't know exactly what was in store. So, we just kind of grew up immigrant style as my dad, just kind of worked all the time to make that money to be able to, kind of give us that lifestyle. So, like, that's where I started to see, like, hard work and just showing up for, like, a bigger purpose than you, like, unconsciously at that age. But in turn, like, I had some health issues that I think made me socially anxious a lot of the times. I had different things like asthma, like some different stomach issues. I'd be in the hospital a lot for different like bacterial infections. So a lot of like the immune system stuff. And in turn, it just made me like a really socially anxious kid. And like when I grew up in school, I didn't really talk that much to anybody, didn't really have many friends at all, didn't enjoy like being in school. Like I was not a good student. I was like a C, B, D student, like just tried to just do it just to get by. So like in turn, sort of like the thing that I loved doing was like playing video games. And that's also how I got on the internet in like 2010. And at first I would just like watch different YouTube videos. I'd try to learn different things. I'd try to like code websites and apps, and then like nothing too crazy or anything, but eventually it led me to starting a YouTube channel because some of the video games that I played like with my friends that I did have, I was the best person out of them. So I was like, all right, I got to start like putting this stuff out there so if anybody else wants to learn, they can do it. And I'm like 12 years old at this time. So
you mentioned Minecraft as being one of the games, and my daughter, who's 19 now, played Minecraft a lot. Like, she was obsessed with it. She would just be in that virtual world. And when you were sharing with me before the show that because of that game, you've been able to make hundreds of thousands of dollars from it, I thought, well, gosh, maybe there was a reason for her to play it if she only knew what to do with it. How do you go from playing games to figuring out how to monetize it like that?
Yeah. So, I mean, like, listen, I think the entire world's changed. Like, if you can be good at a video game and become like an esports player, you can make a bunch of money. That I didn't do that. So what I did is I just started a community around like this already super popular video game. I put it out there and I just kind of let the community, the network do its thing, and I just kind of gave it access. And like what ended up happening is like it just took on like this different network effect, and like within a few months of me launching it, like already hundreds of thousands of people had joined. It was one of the top Minecraft servers in the world.
So was it a membership site?
It was one of those things where if you play a game, it's totally free to come on. But if you want to buy like an extra thing using real world money, kind of like how everyone has like iPhone games, and if you want to do this for 99 cents, it was like kind of that. So like that's where all the money was made, and it was not a conscious choice to make money at all. I just like tried to put this thing out there. I saw what like other Minecraft servers were doing. I'm like, they're selling this. Let me try to do this, and it just kind of like took on a life of its own. And the intent was only sort of like for me to have fun and like maybe try something. That was really it.
Well, when you can make money doing what you love, you never work a day in your life.
Yeah.
And at the ripe old age of, what does that make you?
15.
15. And you're how old now?
21.
At the ripe old age of 21, you were already doing that which you love, and I don't think you're ever going to work a day in your life.
No. I mean, like what I'm doing right now does not feel like work at all, and I'm making more money than I've ever made. And it's just like, you know, if you really got something and you've got a real like strong desire and purpose to do it, like the only thing that's stopping you is yourself. So.
Amen, my brother.
Yeah.
So were your parents entrepreneurial?
So my dad came here, worked, made his way up in positions, and then eventually like became a partner at this pizza store. So other than that, not really. My parents just like worked jobs. I was never really told to like aspire for something amazing, like to like shoot for the stars. Like maybe I did hear that, but I just kind of shut that off. But that was not like a motive for me.
Yeah, but you know, people like you and I are cut from the same cloth. There's the talk of, are things nature or are they nurture? In other words, were you born with this skill and talent, or did you actually grow and learn? Was it nurtured into you? And I believe that nature has so much to do with it, because I too did not come from a family of entrepreneurs. I never knew anything about business, but when I was 8 years old, I was buying gum and selling it to kids for a profit. So I was always looking how to monetize too. And I always just find it fascinating when we meet each other on this planet that we came here already just ready to go. Like, how do you monetize that? And even you said you stumbled across being able to make hundreds of thousands of dollars and you weren't even looking to do it. It was just kind of happened.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I mean, I think it was honestly just sort of like a coping mechanism. Like that was my sort of thing, and like that's how I like conquered like my mind at that time. And I think it's like, I think a lot, like most of it is nature. Like it's kind of like you're given like these ingredients, and like the only thing is like try not to mess them up. But like we always sort of like mess them up, and like I had messed myself up like in a lot of different ways. So like for me, the thing that would like really stop me on my potential, like in my journey, was sort of like my mindset. Like my mind was just totally, like I was sort of like externally successful from that money, but inside like I just thought of myself as like the same old loser. Like I did not think of myself highly, never thought of myself as successful or anything like that at all.
So what have you done to fix that? Because you clearly have a lot of confidence now.
Yeah. So like I kind of had like a breaking out in 2016 where I just like went down this dark path, ended up gaining, like I was over 200 pounds. Just like this depressive spiral. And eventually, you know, I kind of came out of it because I traveled, I went back to Egypt, and like there I just saw like my perspective shifted. And I was like, wait, so my parents came from here, and like I saw how people were living from the other side of the planet. And I was like, and then they came to the United States, and like I just have so much opportunity in front of me. And I knew this from starting my Minecraft server, like why can I just take advantage of it? So like once I had that, then I started to do like research on like health and nutrition, because I was obese and I had a bunch of different health problems. So I eventually found like a diet, like a healthy lifestyle, now that we call it, like not eating anything processed, trying to, you know, meditation, exercising, sleeping right, surrounding yourself with the right people, like reading books, just like all those different things, starting to listen to podcasts. That just kind of took me out of it, lost all the weight, eventually started a business, and then later I started a podcast, and been on this journey ever since.
It's so impressive to me when I meet someone your age that has already gotten a hold of it like that. There was a gentleman I interviewed, Jack Podfin, who is 18 and has already done 2 business expos with 35 businesses at each expo. And here's this, I can't call him a kid, he's a man, he's a businessman. And, you know, at 18 years old is already doing what people spend 50 years trying to figure out. And it's just so impressive. So good for you for grabbing a hold of that. I was entrepreneurial when I was younger, but I let drugs and alcohol get a hold of me. And I didn't start on my a spiritual path, on my self-development, on reading books and understanding what coaching and mentoring was all about until I was way into my 30s. So you are going to be able to inspire so many. Do you do any coaching?
Yeah.
Yeah?
I recently just started.
Nice, nice. So you're just starting coaching, you do a podcast, you are getting ready to write a book, you got all kinds of stuff going on. I want you to share with us a little bit about Instagram and LinkedIn, because we were talking about that. And for those of us old people that are trying to muddle our way through social media, talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So if I can contribute my success to anything aside from like having the podcast as a main platform, it would be hands down LinkedIn. I think Instagram's really useful, but if I were to do one thing, without a doubt it'd be LinkedIn. Because like what I discovered is it's sort of like an untapped ecosystem. Like more and more people are joining on it. It's been getting a lot more popular lately. But ever since I got on it and started to use it more than an online resume, and I started to actually post content every day. And at first it started just writing down my thoughts like in written form, just like ideas, 1,300 characters, that's the limit on LinkedIn, to eventually making videos of my podcast, not about me, and then like pictures and doing that stuff every single day. You know, I get messages from people that, you know, are like these business people at their companies, and they're like, hey, I see you, and the stuff that I post is not necessarily professional stuff. Like it's just like stuff about life, stuff about like just the things that we all go through. And they're like, hey, I really reached out to that. They'll reach out for a call, and then we end up doing business. And then like since I have a podcast, I'll be getting introduced to more and more people. And then eventually it turned into different speaking opportunities and all this other stuff. So like 80-90% of like all of the growth that I've had is coming from LinkedIn.
Including us being here on the TV show today.
Exactly.
Because it was through LinkedIn that we met one another. And I'm just so hung up on doing the Facebook stuff that it's just where I feel comfortable. I'm not really sure what to do with LinkedIn. I don't know why I feel like doing a Facebook Live is what I'm, you know, what I need to do when I would be doing it on LinkedIn instead.
Yeah.
Give us some tips about, like, for those of us who are, and I know you don't do anything on Facebook or not much, what are some tips for people just getting started with LinkedIn and Instagram?
Yeah, so what I would say is like, don't try to pretend to be something. So like a lot of people start, whether it's podcasts or just like start LinkedIn, like they're trying to communicate with the world, but they're trying to put on like a front. Like I'm like this successful you know, host and I know everything about the world. And eventually, for a lot of people, they stop doing it because like that's just not who they are. So what I recommend is to be like as real as possibly authentic as you're willing to put yourself out there. And like for me, like what I've realized is the real strength in it and like how you really start something with other people that are looking at you through a screen is just like trying to use a platform like video or maybe even like podcast, but video is really powerful, that says like, hey, I'm Mark, and you know, like this is what I'm trying to do in the world. You know, these are some of like my shortcomings, and like I've realized that if you really talk about your story and you're not trying to hide anything and you're just trying to let everything surface, people really resonate with that, because believe it or not, there's not that many people doing it.
People do. They resonate with being authentic. You know, when I'm on stage and I speak about my alcoholism, you know, in the very beginning, I'll talk about that, and it's surprising to me how many people will say, you know, that really resonated. Not that they have an alcohol problem or anything about drugs. It's just being open and being transparent. You know, people really appreciate that. So, what are some actual like pragmatic tips, like how often should you post? Talk about the social selling index a little bit of LinkedIn.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I would say is post as many times as you can consistently, as long as you won't burn out. So for me, I post like twice a day. Sometimes that's a video, sometimes that's just me writing. So like what I would say to people is just start like writing down that transparency truth that we talked about. Just start writing that in whatever way that you're comfortable with. So if you don't want to like record yourself, then like, and you're a good writer, or like you have a good idea that you want to get out, whether that's business or something else, just like start writing articles. And like once you put that stuff out there consistently, I would just say to look at other people that are trying to do the same thing as you're doing. You can search it by hashtags. So like for me, when I went on LinkedIn, I literally added every single podcaster. Like I looked up hashtag podcast, hashtag podcast host, and I literally networked with every single person out there because like that's how you establish yourself as the best among that industry. So like I would post a lot of content that's really transparent because believe it or not, like not that many people are doing it. Not that many people are doing it on LinkedIn. But the thing is there's so many decision makers, there's so many business leaders, there's so many influential people on that platform that maybe they wouldn't be on Instagram, maybe they wouldn't be on Twitter, but they're on LinkedIn. And it's like a Saturday morning and like they're just home in the morning, they're drinking their coffee and like they see your message. That's how I've been able to network and get like unbelievable guests on my podcast just from that. So like I would just put your stuff out there consistently, try to see who else is doing it out there, connect with all of them. And I would just say to just be yourself. That's really it.
Do you put a call to action at the end of your post and your videos?
It depends. So if I make an episode, a micro video for a podcast episode, then I'll say, hey, you should check out this entire episode. I'll put it in the comments. I'll put it in my profile. You can just look it up on your iTunes app because putting links in your post on LinkedIn is not really encouraged heavily, and it won't kind of like promote you up in the algorithm because they're trying to keep everybody inside because like that's how they get more attention and more eyeballs on the platform.
Yeah. So if you want a link, if you want to promote a Facebook Live, for example, you put it in the comments, not in the post.
Yeah, I put it in the comments, and like, here's what I would say. Like, the way to use LinkedIn is not to, like, I think it's okay if you're gonna make an announcement, but the way to do it is not to treat it like Twitter, where like you're like putting in 2 sentences and then you're like putting a link. What I would say is be more contextual to the platform about the people that are looking at your stuff at that time. And like if you really actually go in like detailed, like with the copy, and you're like a little bit more detailed, a little bit more intentional, you talk about like why it is that you're even posting this and what kind of effect that it has on you, way more people will resonate with that. And next thing you know, like some of my posts get tens, thousands, hundreds of thousands of views, and I'm not like just like throwing it out there. I'm throwing it out there, but I'm throwing it out there in a more valuable way and like in a more consumable and enjoyable, but also like informative way.
Yeah, well, value is so important, you know, really providing as much value as possible up front. I know there's been a shift from, you know, don't tell anybody anything, you know, keep all your good stuff and make them pay for it. No, give them your good stuff first.
Yeah.
Throw it right out there.
Yeah, and like, you know, recently I interviewed Seth Godin. He's come out with this new book called This Is Marketing. And basically the entire book is this. Technology is always changing the different communication methods. It's always changing the dynamic in which we interact. And we've got to be mindful of that. But like the fundamentals of what makes us as humans is never going to change.
Yeah.
And it's like, now we're actually living in a time that if you do have like a bunch of great qualities that make you a great human, you have more access than ever and you can actually succeed. So it's like, if you actually do those like today in 2018 marketing, like it's no longer about tactic. It's like no longer about like trying to win like the SEO battle, as like Seth Godin says. So like, I think it's like really about doing that, but it's also about like not being full of crap and like being really intentional about why somebody should take life, like time out of their day to like look at your video for a minute. Like that's so selfish if you really think about it. Like you've got to be providing a lot of stuff to separate yourself from the rest.
Absolutely, unique sales proposition. So what is your unique sales proposition? Who is the typical business entrepreneur, human being that you help from a business standpoint?
Yeah, so what I'm trying to do, and I'm recently taking this on ever since in August my podcast hit the top 100 list, is
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I'm really trying to create like the next generation of people around me that are also using their voice in an exponential technology format like podcasting, like passive audio consumption, to be like the next leaders of tomorrow. Like I look at my life and I'm like, I'm 21 years old. I'm still a kid. I have all the time in the world. Like this is, from a business perspective, this is something that I'm really focused on doing. But like also from the other hand, I'm really focused on virtual reality and an augmented reality agency that I run called ViewDream. I started that at the end of 2016, and like for those of you that don't know, virtual reality is like when you put on these goggles and everywhere you look is like this 3D virtual environment. So like I'm really passionate about that because I think that can create a lot of solutions in this world that we don't necessarily have answers for. For example, Walmart, one of the biggest employers out there, is now using virtual reality to train their employees because it's not only more efficient, it's cheaper, and people actually get it more because they're actually doing it. And it's way faster. And then at the same time, the US military is using it to treat veterans that have PTSD. So like that doesn't even scratch the surface. So like there's all of these different ways. So when I found out about that, I'm like, this is something that I'm really gonna try to like hit hard in like the next 10, 15 years of my future. So like I think it's kind of both of those things of using my podcast, and they come back and forth to each other.
Yeah.
And overall, like from a holistic standpoint, I would say that what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make sure that like anybody who grows up that, let's say like they're an immigrant or not, they don't really come from much, they're never told that they would succeed, like they feel like they don't have any talent, they don't have the confidence, the self-esteem. Like I remember whenever I'd see like an interview like this or anything of the sort, I'd be like, oh, those are just people that are different from me. Like I can't do that.
Separate from, yeah.
Yeah, so like I just realized that, and especially since I made money, I realized like, wait, what is success really? Like what is the point of life? So like the person I'm trying to reach is somebody who like has that kind of questions, like maybe has doubts about their self. And like I think what makes me succeed from being like a top 100 podcast is like I'm not trying to front. Like I just go on and I'm just like trying to learn from these people. Like I know nothing. Like I'm just trying to take a seat at this table and just kind of learn from the experience.
Well, you know, you and I have that in common, that we use our platform as a way to meet some really interesting people. You know, it's a great way to network. It's a great way to say, hey, I have a TV show. You want to be on my show? You want to be on my podcast? You want to, you know, be on my radio show? So for people who create those, that's such an awesome way. But for those people that are out there that aren't ready to step into creating a podcast, you've clearly gotten over your anxiety. You don't have any issues with confidence. You're right out there living life, living it out loud. What are a couple of tips you would give people that aren't ready to do a podcast but really want to step into their power?
Yeah, I think the first thing is realizing that like everyone kind of deals with this. Some people are more anxious than others, but like I've conquered the like death grip that anxiety has over me, but I still get anxious. Like I would say that I'm anxious, you know, right now to agree, like before we stepped in. But like what I've learned to do is like, that's actually a good thing. Like the fact that you have butterflies, the fact that you might be a little bit nervous is actually a good thing, because that means that you care. And believe it or not a lot of people would care. Like that's the reason why you're in your position. So like the moment when I started to like come at anxiety in that way and like, oh wait, why is this happening? Like, you know, like I fundamentally believe that everything happens sort of the way it does. And maybe like the feelings of anxiety are happening for a reason. They're kind of like happening to send you a message. And for me, I believe when I was younger, they were there to send me a message of like I should not be where I'm supposed to be. Like I was supposed to be in a higher position, but I wasn't performing at that degree based on like my mindset. So once I understood anxiety, that was the big crack. Another big one was my physiology, my literal health. I remember that ever since I stopped eating sugar, a bunch of processed things, bad foods, like just drinking a bunch of sodas all the time and just like not treating my body the way that I was supposed to, and not feeding up with like whole foods from the ground, like vegetables and like different animals and this and that. When I stopped doing that and like when I started exercising and getting more energy, I remember I had this like conversation with somebody at dinner, and I was like, most of the anxiety that I feel is mostly gone. Because like what I realized is like when I grew up with those health issues I talked to you about before, once I started living that healthy lifestyle, a lot of those symptoms, a lot of the drugs that I was taking for them went away.
Interesting.
And like anxiety happened to be one of the symptoms. So like I still think I'm like naturally an introvert, like naturally like a little bit more anxious, but it's just like going on the spearhead and going on the offense because you know that. Yeah.
Good stuff. So, what are some books? Who are some of your mentors? What are some yummy things you can refer people to? And who do you want on your podcast? Do a little bit of a cattle call too.
Yeah. So, without a doubt, somebody that I looked at's like really made a difference in my life, Gary Vaynerchuk. He was definitely not the spark to my journey, but I remember like just randomly scrolling on Facebook and having like one of his videos pop up in my feed. And I don't remember what the exact video was, but it pissed me off. And I was thinking about it in like 2 weeks, and what I realized is he was trying to reveal me to myself and to what I could be. And like within a couple weeks after that, that's where like sort of like my momentum journey sort of started. So like he's somebody that I'm definitely going to have to interview on my podcast. I'm trying to get him on. And he's somebody that I've also learned from and has like impacted me heavily from my life, from like not just a business perspective, but also just like a mindset and like a 21st century perspective.
So he challenges you.
Yeah, 100%. Somebody else, or another book rather, Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill, a classic.
Good
Everyone
classic.
knows it. It's made, it's made more millionaires than any other book or something like that. But yeah, that's a real fundamental. And for me, that was sort of the book that like created my foundation. Like that was a book that eventually became like the wallpaper of my mind. Like all these different elements like desire, persistence, auto-suggestion, like the different fears in the world, like all that stuff kind of like became my framework.
Well, like you were mentioning, things don't change. People are people. And isn't it interesting that a book that was written that long ago, and when you read it, is actually in a different language almost, the way that the words are positioned.
Yeah.
It is so very different. So in this last 30 seconds of the show, what would you like our viewers to know?
I would like your viewers to know that, honestly, I don't think it matters where you came from or like what you even think about yourself. I think it just matters where you go from here. And for me, fundamental things that I did were to take responsibility for my life and to be accountable and to stop blaming people, taking action, and then just finding a way. And that's never let me down.
Taking responsibility has been one of the biggest things. Matter of fact, I feel like sometimes I take too much responsibility for things because people do need to take their own responsibility. But words of wisdom from a 21-year-old. That should be the name of the show. Words of wisdom from a 21-year-old. Happiness Jungle saying it's a jungle out there, but you can be happy. And with guests like these, we can be too. Thank you.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.